is essentially an advocate for victims of clergy sexual misconduct, or at least was. And certainly she was very knowledgeable about Unitarian Universalist clergy misconduct, clergy sexual misconduct more specifically. And so I thought, well, what's going on here? Who's this Richard Buell guy? And why is he being convicted of something? You know, what's Reverend Deborah Pope Lance's involvement here? Because Reverend Deborah Pope Lance, from my knowledge, you know, normally dealt with sexual misconduct matters. So I was wondering, is it possible that Richard Buell is another minister of the Unitarian Church of Norwell, or a past minister of the Unitarian Church of Norwell, who committed some kind of sexual misconduct? And that's what this meeting's all about. So I ran search on Richard Buell and Norwell, and it quickly was brought to my attention that Richard Buell apparently was not a minister, apparently was not any member of the clergy, was basically a lay person, but he had nonetheless been convicted of the forcible rape of girls who were no older than 12 years old at the time the rapes took place, and who, one of whom was a female family member. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. You know, here's Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein stridently criticizing the Roman Catholic Church over its clergy sex abuse problems, and specifically child sex abuse problems, which it definitely has. Meanwhile, she's erasing, deleting, memory holding my comments that speak about child sex abuse specifically. And here, assuming it is Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein is peace bang, I didn't know for sure at that time. Here she is, stridently pointing the finger at the Roman Catholic Church, while one of her own parishioners has just been convicted of the forcible rape of children who were no older than 12 years old at the times the rapes took place. And it's just like, this is serious sexual abuse of children. This is not just fondling by a priest, which is, what had prompted her blog post. Obviously, there's worse sexual abuse committed by Roman Catholic priests. I'm sure Roman Catholic priests have raped and even repeatedly raped young children. This is known. But here's, Peace Bang, who I wasn't certain was Reverend Victoria Weinstein, but Reverend Victoria Weinstein was now the prime suspect. So what I did is I came back and I commented on that blog post, and what I said was, oh, you might want to talk to your colleague, because Peace Bang did identify herself as a Unitarian Universalist minister. So I didn't know for sure that Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, or Reverend Victoria Weinstein at the time, she didn't have her doctorate at that time, I wasn't sure that she was Peace Bang, but I thought she might be. But I thought, let's just leave it at colleague, because if Peace Bang's a Unitarian Universalist minister and Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein is a Unitarian Universalist minister, well then Reverend Victoria Weinstein is a colleague of Peace Bang if she's not Peace Bang herself. So that's what I did. I just said, hey, you might want to talk to your colleague about, Richard Buell and his recent conviction for forcible rape of children, blah, blah, blah. This was in a comment. Well, that comment was very, very quickly deleted. I don't think it was up for more than a few minutes. And indeed, within minutes, I received an email from Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, which said, well, actually, Reverend Victoria Weinstein, as I said, she didn't have her doctorate at that time. So Reverend Victoria Weinstein emails me and says, I don't talk about my congregants' problems or whatever, and I expect you not to either. I mean, that's not her exact words, but that's the upshot of what she said to me in the email. It's like, shut the fuck up about Richard Buell. Like, I don't talk about him and you shouldn't either. That's essentially what she said. So this was clear now that it was in fact it was in fact Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein who was peace bang. This was like basically absolutely certain now that peace bang was Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. I know it's always good to get a thumbs up there. So that's it. This is basically how I outed Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein is not a mother. She comes across as a single and apparently unhappily single Unitarian Universalist female minister. But nonetheless, she's a female Unitarian Universalist minister who directly participates in Unitarian Universalist cover-up of child sex abuse committed by her own parishioner, Richard Buell, but also Unitarian Universalist ministers such as Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell, etc. So yes, to the best of my knowledge, peace bang, also known as Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein, is not a mother, but she is indeed a female Unitarian Universalist minister who directly participates in Unitarian Universalist cover-up of child sex abuse. She also non-sexually abuses children. That's another story. But we could talk about it. I'm just going to check the time here and see if my sensor's overheating. Okay, so we got some minutes left in this half-hour segment. So yes, let's talk about Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein's own non-sexual physical abuse, if not also emotional and psychological abuse of a child, which she blogged about. Like this is her own story that she didn't seem to have any qualms about writing a blog post about. So here's the story. One of the children of one of Reverend Victoria Weinstein's congregants was caught shoplifting. And this child, a young boy, somehow convinced the police to bring him to Reverend Weinstein rather than to bring him home to his parents. So that's what happened. According to Reverend Weinstein's own testimony, basically a police officer showed up at her residence with the young boy to basically hand the young boy over to her care. And that's what happened. The police officer just basically placed this child under Reverend Weinstein's guardianship and left. And according to Reverend Weinstein's own testimony, the minute the police officer left and therefore would not be a witness to her physical abuse, she, according to her own testimony, kicked this child in the ass twice and hard. So these weren't just little light taps with her foot on his tushy. These were two hard kicks to his ass by Reverend Victoria Weinstein. This is basically physical abuse of a child. I mean, it's also known as corporal punishment. But the fact is, you know, as a Unitarian Universalist minister especially, Reverend Victoria Weinstein had absolutely no right to inflict fairly serious corporal punishment on a child of one of her parishioners, especially without the knowledge or the consent, dare I say consent, of the parent involved. So this is physical abuse of a child committed by Reverend Victoria Weinstein. And you know what I think? I actually think that the mother of the child in question certainly did not cover that up. In fact, from circumstantial evidence, I think it's likely that the mother of the child in question, when it came to her attention that her child had been kicked twice by Reverend Victoria Weinstein actually filed a complaint against Reverend Dr. Victoria Weinstein. I don't have any absolute proof of this, but from circumstantial evidence, I can speculate that this mother didn't, she wasn't happy about that. She didn't cover up Reverend Weinstein's abuse of her child. She might have. It's possible she actually did, but I have reason to believe that no, this mother was not very happy about Reverend Weinstein's kicking of her child in the tushy without her knowledge or consent. I think we're going to be wrapping things up soon. Just got someone. Oh, okay, so this is not a Unitarian. Thought it might be coming to the church, but no. So yeah, it's coming up for 11 o'clock. If it hasn't already passed 11 o'clock, we're almost done with a half-hour segment of video. So I think we're pretty well done here, at least for the time being. I'm going to have a coffee, and then I'm going to decide if I want to come back and protest. Yeah, 11:08. So I think I'm probably going to make a day of it. Although really I probably should go and get some nice photos, but nonetheless, I think for various reasons it's worth just having a coffee and then coming back and continuing the protest, especially in light of the fact that my chalk slogans were erased. I think I'm going to rewrite one or two of the chalk slogans that were erased and go have a coffee. Then I'll come back at, let's say, 11:45 and resume my protest, and hopefully the chalk slogans won't have been erased again. But if they are, it's a debate here. Like, maybe I should just leave well enough alone and not rewrite them, because if I go away, I can, this will be dry. This was very wet earlier, but now it's almost totally dry. It will be totally dry if I come back after coffee. So I think that's what's going to happen. So we're pretty well wrapping it up here.